So yeah, I'm Eric. I started development in 2003. I started off with .NET, got into front end, got into Node. These days, I'm most interested in my off time in iOS development. Thoroughly enjoy that. I did development full time until March of this year, and then I kind of hung up my full time developer hat and put on the teacher hat. So I work at a place called the Iron Yard in Dallas, and I basically teach people who are new to coding how to code. And so this is our page about our Dallas campus. That's not us, but this is us here. We have a place downtown. We do 12-week full-time intensive courses trying to help people make career changes. That tends to be the people that come to our courses. So I teach front end, so that means starting with HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and we do some React as well in the course. So that's me. So developer turned teacher. Still do lots of coding. Now more of my coding is little samples and things for instructional use. But I get more off time, so I get to use my off time to write apps and stuff. So anyway, so that's me. And today we're going to talk about events and how they work. If you are brand new to JavaScript, this is going to be a difficult talk for you. If you are at least comfortable in JavaScript, not great, just you've used it, you should be able to get plenty out of this. If you've done a lot of JavaScript, then obviously that will help. If you are newer, on the newer side of JavaScript, there's lots of samples here that you can dig into later. I've got some visuals. Just understanding some of the high-level concepts will help you in understanding various things. I put in the Meetup 2 links in the comments. One of them is to the source code. Everything I've got for you tonight is right there if you want to go download it and use it. And then there's a live version running if you want to just run it on your computer as we go. All right? So, JavaScript events. Okay, let's get started. Here's what we're basically going to talk about today. One, we're going to look at a very simple example of events in JavaScript and just get our feet wet with that. Then we're going to talk about the concept of capturing and bubbling. This is something that developers often don't understand first about how events work in browsers in JavaScript. So we're going to go into that because that's very important to understand and very important to understand for event delegation, which is a very common technique used in JavaScript web applications. We're going to talk about event.stop propagation, which you may have seen if you've done some JavaScript, also prevent default. Then we're going to talk about various UI events, and we're going to look at a number of examples. So that's generally how we go. I am very amenable to being disrupted, and you can ask me questions. You can at some point say, slow down, that was too fast. Or you can even say, speed up, that was too slow, if you want to as well. It's totally fine. I would rather this be more of a conversation, so if you got questions, bring them up. I'm ready, hopefully. Ready for that. All right? Any questions? Okay. Let's look at a demo. I want to look at, let's see, I'm going to close that. And that's the source code. It's mostly just a bunch of HTML files. Here we go. Here's our demo page today. And so everything we're going to be using is coming off of this. And if you follow that link that I put up on the Meetup, then this will take you to this running up on Amazon S3. So you can test it in your browser if you want. Okay. A simple event. We're going to be looking a lot at the JavaScript console to see what it has to say for us today. Let's see. I'll make that a little bit bigger. So I have a simple event. I have a div and I have a button. If I click the div, down here says that I clicked the div. If I click the button, it says that I clicked the button. Okay? Fairly simple in terms of how events work. So let's go to that. Here we go. Here is our example. Is that big enough for everybody? Good with that? Yeah. Okay, cool. And this is up on GitHub, so you can always go look at it. This is simple-event.html. Okay, what do we have? We have a button, and we have a div that's here on lines 13 and 15. And then we have our script. So the way you set up events in modern JavaScript is something called addEventListener. Okay? So first of all, let's say you have a button. So we're going to go to the DOM, the document object model. That's that piece of that thing in code that you would talk to make modifications of the live page in JavaScript or get things from the live page in JavaScript. That's what is in document. Okay? I'm going to call query selector and find something. So query selector lets you give it a query. Like in this case, my query is button. Find me the button. And then select it. So it's query selector. So I get the button right here. And you can view this as like having a remote control to what's in the page. Right? If you do something to button, it's like doing something to something in the page. So I get the button out, and I say button addEventListener. So this is how we handle events. So what are events? Well, whenever a user is using a web page, there's lots of different types of events. If they scroll the web page, there's a scroll event. It fires whenever they scroll. There's a click event. So when a user uses their mouse and hits the left mouse button, you're going to get a click event on whatever element in the DOM, the document object model, div, button, whatever. You're going to get a click event on that thing. For phones, there are touch events. We'll talk about how phones emulate click events, even though there's no mouse here, in a minute. For phones, there's touch events. So when you touch, they have events for that. This is all an event-based system. It's you say, okay, here's the event I want to listen to. So when that event happens, do something. So here's how it works. So on the button, I want to add, okay, a listener for an event. In other words, there's going to be an event, and when it happens, I want to listen to it. When you don't add an event listener and you click on something, the event's happening. It's totally happening. But you're just not listening to it. Okay? So this is the way to say, okay, when that event happens, listen. And a listener in JavaScript is a function. So we say button, add an event listener. Okay? So whenever we take this button and we click on it, the listener fires. Here's the listener right here. And I'm going to console log the event target tag name. So if we look at that example, we click on the div. Tag name for a div is div. Tag name for a button is button. And I'm using this same listener on the button and on the div. And I just showed you two different ways of doing this. In this case, I put the button in that variable and then call addEventListener. Or you can select it and that's bad code. Or you can just select it, addEventListener, click. There you go. Very, very simple example as far as events go. So let's look at this, because you got to understand this if you want to do JavaScript programming events. Okay? The thing you're listening to is a DOM element. It could be actually the whole window. If you want to listen to something that happens on the whole window. Or the body element, or a div inside it, or a button, or whatever. So you can listen to any of those things. This right here is what you're listening to. Okay? Then you're going to add an event listener. So first, let's think about the listener. The listener it's like the spy that you're sending in. So when the thing happens, you know about it. That's the function of the listener. And the listener is a function. So you pass it a function, and whenever the event happens, it fires the listener and says, okay, listener, the event happened. Okay? Any questions about that?
So the old on-click thing in the element itself is kind of deprecated?
It still works for backwards compatibility reasons. As far as I know, it seems to work just fine. I haven't myself done it in years because, yes, in general, we don't go that route anymore. Yeah. We're separating more of our code out of our HTML and putting plain JavaScript. Yeah.
So query selector, only HTML elements, correct? Meaning it can only find HTML elements.
No, you could find like SVG elements.
Okay.
If you have SVG embedded in your page.
So I'm here because I know jQuery and not so much JavaScript. So,
So I think on I think personally, I think addEventListener's, query selectors API was built off of jQuery.
Okay.
Because just like in a jQuery selector, you can do like,
Right.
so any CSS selector can be put in query selector.
Okay.
And now jQuery's, you just do a selector and it gives you essentially an array of everything that's selected, right? Query selector finds the first thing on a page. Query selector all returns all things on a page that it selects.
Okay, cool.
So that's slightly different than jQuery. There's one example of jQuery later, but mostly we're just in regular JavaScript today.
It's not the IP that's button, it's just the, but you have to define it as a button first.
So yeah, here's the button right here, but it's not a class, it's not an ID. If back in the old days, we used to use get element by ID, right? Or get elements by tag name or get element class name. Query selector works with any CSS selector. So it can be a class, it can be a tag, it can be an ID, it can be combinations of classes and IDs and tags. So it's quite robust. It is very much like jQuery. If you use jQuery selector system, it's to me clearly modeled after or at least influenced by that, because it's a super nice way of being able to select things.
Yeah, it does the same concept.
Because I
I still like using jQuery personally. I really do. It's a great thing. Today we're just going to be talking about JavaScript, but jQuery is really great. We use it quite a bit in my class as well. Okay, so that's our example of our basic event. We good with that? All right, okay. Now if you're not used to event programming, now we're going to talk in JavaScript, now we're going to talk about something you might think is weird. Capturing and bubbling. All right. Should have noticed something. I'm going to click on this button. Okay? Oh, that's too big. Can't see it. Oops. There we go, right there. Okay, so what's happening? I'm clicking on the button, but I'm getting all sorts of console logs. So what's up with that? So, there we go. This is in capturing and bubbling number 1. Right there. So what does this look like? So I've got this piece of DOM. It's a body, it's a div with an ID called inner. A div inside of it called more inner, because it's more inner than inner. And then I have a button, okay? And then click me. So in terms of events, I have the click event attached on window, body, inner, more inner, and button. And I'm doing it down here all again, except in the opposite order. Button, more inner, inner, body, and window. Other than the order, the only difference between them is this third argument that often doesn't get passed to addEventListener. For the first set of them, passing a true. For the last set of them, I'm passing a false. Okay? So, what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 events. All right, so I'm going to refresh here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 fragments. So in other words, I clicked on the button. I didn't click on the window and the body and inner and more inner and the button. I just clicked on the button. Yet this event fired for all of them. Why? That seems strange. Well, for DOM events, they've got this idea of capturing and bubbling. So this is gray, even though we can't see it, right up here. Imagine this is the body, okay, and out here is the window. Whenever I do a click, what happens is the event goes through a capturing phase, where the event starts up at the window and goes in through every parent element of the button until it gets to the button. Okay? So it fires on window, body, inner, more inner, button. It's the capturing phase. For bubbling, we go the opposite way. All right, you get here, now you turn back around and you go more inner, inner, body, window. Okay? So let's go back and look at our example. Here we go. Window, body, inner, more inner, button, button, more inner, inner, body, window. In, out. Okay. Now, what determines capturing versus bubbling? If you put a true as that third argument, it puts the event on the capture phase of the event lifecycle. If you put false, it puts that event on the bubbling phase. So capture is capturing false, or if you just leave it out, bubbling. Okay? Is that weird? It's a little strange. It actually gives you some really interesting patterns. We'll see some in a minute. That's actually how events work. Now, if you don't have event listeners attached to all of these things, then you don't see them. They're happening, you just don't see them. Okay? Let's look at a very similar example. Capturing and bubbling 2. Okay? I did a little bit better job of organizing this information, but it's the same idea. I didn't put it on the window, but body, inner, first. And so I now have two sibling DOM nodes. Okay? So there's the body, and then there's inner, and then there's first is gray, second is purple. Then there's a button in each one of those. So I clicked on click me in first, so therefore it goes from body to inner to first to the button in first, and then bubbles out from button, first, inner, body. Okay? Now if I were to clear that, go with 2, then it's going to go body because, well, that's shared. Body surrounds everything. Inner, that surrounds both of them, but at this point I go down second into the button. Okay? So if I click on the button in first, the capturing goes down this part of the DOM tree and then up. If I click on the click me in second, it goes that way. Or you can look at it this way. I have the body that holds the inner, and the inner holds two sibling nodes which hold these two buttons. If I click on this button, it goes down from body to inner to first. Click me on capture, goes back up on bubble. If I click on the other one, it goes down this part. Body and inner get fired on each one of them. Okay? Okay, so that's genuinely weird. Okay? But it's kind of cool. And it is important to know in certain circumstances. And really helps explain what I'm about to show you now. Now I do want to show you this while we're here. So if I click on click me to, it does go there. But if I click on inner, it obviously doesn't go down to the button because I didn't click on button. It just goes into inner. So I see the capture for body and inner, and then turns back around and bubbles inner back out to body. And then if I just click on the body, then we just get body. Okay? So it's drilling into whatever you clicked and then bubbling back out. What do you think?
Mind blown.
Boom! All right.
So I assume you're going to explain what capturing and bubbling are, and why you use one instead of the other?
I have never in my life actually used capture.
That's what I was wondering.
Never done it. Bubbling, yes, I actually do quite a bit. Actually, since I never put the third parameter on, all my addEventListeners are bubbles, essentially. In event delegation, though, understanding how this works helps understand why event delegation, which is something I use a lot in what we're about to cover. Okay? Which is, it's good to know that this is how this stuff works, because sometimes you read that web documentation and they talked about it, and this will help you understand it conceptually. But from a practical standpoint, let's talk about event delegation. All right, here's a bad example. Okay? So I'm going to show you bad, and then I'm going to show you good. So let's look at this code. Close that. Event delegation. No, that's the good one. No event delegation. Should have called it bad event delegation. All right, so what do we got here? We have some styles. This toggled style inverts the colors. All right, so when we see this happening, That's that class being applied. So my DOM is simple. I have a button which will add list items. I have an unordered list with boring list items. And down here at the bottom, what I'm doing is my listener toggles the toggled class. This is using class list, which is something built into browsers for toggling classes. And so I'm grabbing all the list items here on page load, and I am adding event listener. No, this is not the right way to do it. Don't do this at home. The right way is coming up next. I'm adding all the event listeners, and or adding click to all the items in it, and then I have for button, when you click on it, I create a new list item, put text in it, and add it to the page. So why am I doing this to you? So if I go here and I click on this works pretty well. You know, it's totally cool. That one works too. I'm going to add a new list item. Still works. Still works. Oh snap. Doesn't work. Why doesn't it work? I added the event to all list items. Well, the reason why is this. When I loaded the page, I added the event listener to all the things that were there on the page at the time. Okay? Now I could, whenever I create the list item, add an event listener then too. And that would work. It's not the right way to do this. Given now our deep knowledge of capturing and bubbling, we should come up with a better way to do this. So if we back up and look at the event bubbling one, there was something interesting that we saw but we didn't really talk about in the console. Okay? And this is going to be very, very handy for us. Let me open that back up. Capturing and bubbling. Whenever I console logged event, current target, and event target. Okay? So when you attach a listener with addEventListener, it will pass you an event object. That event object has information in it, like what's your XY coordinates relative to the page, what's your XY coordinates relative to the screen, what DOM node did you click on, all that kind of stuff. So current target and target. Target is the actual DOM element you clicked on, or mouse down on, or touched, or whatever. And that's what target is. Current target is the HTML node that is currently, the event is currently firing on. Okay? Not the one you clicked. Where's the event firing? So if we look at this example, this last one is the target, event target. And so as you can see, click me, 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 click me. Same for all of them. However, as it goes down the DOM tree and then back up, the current target is the body, inner, first, button, button, first, inner, body. Okay? Okay. Most important is this target. So let's go back and let's look at event delegation good. So in this fabulous example, I have the same capabilities of toggling things on and off. Here we go. But I can also add things and they toggle too. Okay? And all in actually slightly less code than we did before. So how's that work? Event delegation. Okay. Styling's the same. Same DOM. A little different down here. Toggle. Here, I'm gonna comment this out for a second. We'll come back to why that's there in a minute. So instead of attaching the click event to the list item, I can attach the click event to the unordered list. Why? Well, because it's fine, because it'll bubble up to the list. You click on a list item, totally cool. I can just attach one event listener to the UL, and then when you click on the list item, I'll get it. This is why, ultimately, you can do this once, and then no matter how many list items you put in, the click events still work. Because you click, it'll totally ignore it, but it'll go up to the unordered list, and boom, fire. So in this case, the button stuff, this is exactly the same, just depending on the child. So this and this, actually just this right now is the only difference between the two. Okay? So let's see. So that is ultimately why this works. Now let's look at another picture. Okay. This is doing this the wrong way. I have an unordered list. I have 4 list items. I attach the listener to each one of these items. All right? It's totally cool. But if I add another list item, unless I purposely go make it happen, these will not be attached. So that's why as you add new items, they won't be attached to the listener and it won't fire. With event delegation, you don't ever attach this to the list items. You attach it to the unordered list. So that when you click, no click event, who cares? But it comes here, and that's what it's attached to. So therefore, it bubbles up to the unordered list, and the listener will fire. Which is why when you add more list items, it doesn't matter. No code change needed. Because you click, no event handler there anyway, so it's not like you're missing anything. It bubbles to the unordered list, and then the listener will fire. Okay? Yes, sir.
There resource advantages to a single listener versus say 20 or 30 on a page, or
Yes.
I mean, to what extent could you? Because theoretically, you could put a listener at the body level that searches for that target
Yep.
to read all events happening on the page at one place.
Yes, you could.
Would you want to do that? I mean, for like readability purposes and understanding what the code is doing?
Actually, for readability purposes, I would avoid it. Because having it, if you look at the code,
It's like the farther away you get it from the actual target, the harder it is to figure out where it's happening at.
exactly. I'm one element away,
Right,
right? If it's up at the body, I'm like, where in this thing,
right.
right? Now this will be fun. All right, I'm gonna let's go to Amazon. No, Meetup. Okay. I'm gonna open up terminal or console. All right. I'm going to say window.addEventListener. Click. Okay. Function. T. I'm going to log the event EVT target tag name. Okay. So whatever DOM element I'm clicking on, I'm going to get that's the EVT.target. I'm going to get its tag name, and I'm going to console log it so that I can do this. Okay? Cool. So now, I'm going to click here. That is apparently an H2. That's a link. I don't want to click on that. That's a div. Oh, that's a link. I want to click on that. Nope, these are all divs that I'm clicking on right now. Is there anything other than divs in this thing? Still a div. All right, that's a DD. That's a definition. I don't ever use this. So there's a paragraph. There's another paragraph. And so what I've done here is, because you can just write code in the console and just do stuff, I've done what you just said. I added an event listener to the window, so if I click anywhere on this thing, I see the event. Oh, list item. Hey, cool. There's a different one. I see the event and I see the tag name. And of course, you can console log anything about it, right? So I'm going to change this to not the tag name, but just the whole element. So here we go. Here's the whole element right here. No. Down here. Yes. There we go. I can dig in, and that's that element right there. All right? So yeah, you can totally do that. In some occasions, it might be warranted. I believe React, in its event system, basically handles it that way. You don't code that way. You code more like normal JavaScript, but I believe they basically put a they use event delegation on the window and handle all events that way. I won't look it up, but I'm pretty sure I read somewhere that they do it that way, and then part of it is for performance. Yeah.
Sorry to derail us. Can you tell me what a class list is one more time in terms of the JavaScript that you wrote?
Class list?
Yes. I just looked at it at the end.
That's my go-to. So back in the olden day, I think you used class name as a property if you wanted to, with JavaScript, attach a class name or change a class. Class list basically gives you an API to add, remove, toggle classes, or contains. It's built into the browsers. It works in pretty well. Let's see, basic support back to IE 10, so maybe you'll want to use jQuery. but-
Maybe it'd be better if I say I'm thinking of a class as an actual class equals whatever,
Yeah.
and I don't see a class in your HTML, so that's where I'm confused. So it makes sense, like you have a UL with LIs, but there's no classes.
All right, let's go back to that. So we're talking about, I'm toggling class here.
Okay.
So that's what's doing. I'm sorry for the confusion.
That
So
makes sense.
let's go look at that. I will inspect this right here.
You added the class toggle.
It is toggled, so as I toggle it on and off, it is getting added and removed.
Great, I understand now.
Cool. All right. No problem to derail. So let's see. Was there anything else in event delegation? No. Okay, cool. At least in terms of pictures. Now there's one potential problem here. Okay, and that's why this code is here. Right now, whatever I clicked on will get the toggled class applied to it. So if I go out here, there we go. What happened? Well, the toggled class got put on the unordered list itself because I was clicking to the left of the list items and missed them and hit the parent element, which is where the event was. I mean, down here it didn't do anything because the event's not applied down here. So what you're sometimes going to do in event delegation is you'll have to check to make sure you're clicking on the thing that you expect. In this case, I'm checking, is what I'm clicking on a list item? Yes. Okay, then I'll run my code. You could use class list to say, am I clicking on a thing with a particular class? Or am I clicking on a thing with a particular ID? I mean, it's just anything you can imagine that you can check in the DOM, you could check at that point to make those kind of decisions. Okay? And in this case, that's as simple as it is. Am I clicking on a list item? If it is, that's what I intend. And then I toggle the class. Any questions before we try sentences? Cool. Stop propagation. Why do you care about stop propagation? Okay. Propagation has to do with up and down, right? Has to do with capturing the bubble. That's the event propagating down the DOM tree and back up the DOM tree. Okay. If you ever want to stop propagating, you can tell it to stop going down or up the DOM tree by calling event, that event object that gets passed in, by calling event.stopPropagation. Okay? Where is this useful? Well, I'll give you an example. So we built in my class this time, we built a jQuery-based to-do list because that's what you do. You build to-do lists when you do JavaScript. So we built a jQuery-based to-do list, and whenever you clicked on the item, it not only would mark them as done, but actually would make an API call to server and say, mark that item as done. And of course, if you deleted things, it would do that. Okay? We actually needed stop propagation here. At least needed it for cleanliness sake. So let's look at that. Stop propagation. Okay. Let's look at our DOM. It is unordered list with list items, and there's an embedded button in it. Okay? In this case, I am actually using jQuery. So put the jQuery fans out there. Here's your one jQuery example. I'm going to turn off stop propagation, and let's see what happens. Okay, so I can mark things as done, and you see the console log, and I can delete things. All right. Now that I've made my change and refreshed, I can mark things as done. That's cool. If I delete, what happens? It deletes it and marks it as done. Now think, based on your now quite thorough knowledge, capturing and bubbling, why?
Call the event from the stop.
So I have a click event attached to both the delete button and the list item. If I click on the list item, only that one fires, because when it comes in here and it captures down into list item, then we'll bubble back up. However, with the delete button, it will capture down into the delete button and then bubble back up to the window, which means it will fire this, and then on the bubbling phase will then fire this click, because the click event happened also on the list item. Okay? Whoa, right? Weird.
So that mainly is a problem because you're listening to the same event. So in this case, it's both click events on both items. If you had different events, you could potentially bypass those levels.
Yes.
Could you pass true or false there to determine this as well?
I don't think it would affect it in this case, because that will just change it from capturing.
Right.
So let's say, for the sake of argument, we could change them both to capturing. Actually, if we changed it to capturing, it might mean mark it done gets fired first, and then delete.
Okay.
That's what I would assume. Let's try it.
I think you're right. I think it would mark it that
So
first.
you don't get an error because you've deleted the object and it's trying to bubble up to something that's not there.
Nope. What in the world? Can I create property? I'm not trying to. Oh, I forgot. This is jQuery.
Yeah.
I don't actually know how to
No worries.
capture on jQuery. That's interesting. Hmm. But logic would reason that it would actually reverse the order. Okay? So if you wanted to stop propagation once it gets to the DOM element, I clicked on first, because if you do bubbling, the first event will fire that is the bubble of the thing you actually clicked on. Okay? When that happens, you say stop propagation, the other one won't fire. So we go back here, mark it done, that works fine. When I delete, it just deletes. Stop propagation. In some cases, it won't actually have any negative side effect, like in the case of our app that we built. It deleted the item and then tried to mark it as done. Item's gone. There wasn't actually any side effect. But we noticed the console, we're like, oh wait, we should fix that. And so we went in and fixed it with stop propagation. Sometimes it will matter, and that's how you do it. It's actually quite easy once you know what to do. Now let's go back to capturing the bubbling page again and see this. Capturing and bubbling. This captures all the way down. And bubbles up. Okay, so we haven't made any changes. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to, on more inner, I'm going to say evt.stop propagation. I frequently misspell that. Propagation. All right, so when we get to more inner, so like right now, it's going through more inner to button and then back up. If I refresh, it stops at more inner in the capture phase because I told it to by event stop propagation. Okay? I don't ever use capture, I really don't, but I do. Most people use bubbling, and knowing when to do that can be very handy. All right. Event delegation, stop propagation, prevent default. Okay? So here's a link. And as we look there, it will go to google.com. So I can click on it, and I don't go to google.com. And I get a console log telling me that I'm not going to let that happen. So what's going on with that? Let's see, default. Go. Some actions in the browser have default behaviors, like for example, anchor tags. Anchor tags, by default, when you have an href, you click on the thing, you will go somewhere. That's kind of the point of the anchor tag. if for some reason you want to prevent that, like you want to use an anchor tag on the page, but you don't actually want to go somewhere. Here I have selecting the anchor tag there. I'm calling prevent default. And so therefore, what's default behavior on an anchor is to navigate somewhere. This keeps the navigation from happening. If I turn that off, come back, refresh, then I will totally go to Google. That's all it is. Okay? Some people like to make buttons out of links because they like the look or familiarity of it or whatever, and that is how you would be able to use an anchor tag, just like a normal button, but without it navigating something. Okay? Sometimes useful, often not.
Struggling for use cases.
Struggling for use cases. This is where Amazon's for. All right, we're going to look up a book to teach us what to do here. So let's, here we go, the Maccabees and the Mishnah. Okay, here we go. Look, that's a link. This is going to navigate me to another page. Nope. Okay, so Amazon does this a lot. Okay. Could they have used a button? Yes.
Well,
They did now.
is that an href? I mean, is that an A? I thought we looked at the other day, that was a clap, it is an
Yeah, here it is. Here's another way of killing it. This JavaScript void thing, that's kind of boring, but that's another way of doing it. But it's a span wrapped in anchor tag. Okay.
They use event default a lot in React because of single page applications. You don't want to refresh your page, so when you're using React, it's use it quite a bit.
Okay. Makes sense. So that's prevent default. Maybe you'll need it, maybe you won't. All right, now we're getting into more of the samples. So actually, before we get into that, let's talk about some of the events that are actually available to us. Now we know the core. Right? We're talking about core principles of JavaScript stuff tonight. Let's talk about some of the core events. All right, click. Click is very useful for desktop, usable on touch, though not sometimes the one you want. So, historically speaking, iPhone comes out, it has a real browser in it, all right? This real browser in it, it's not using some sort of pseudo web. A lot of the old mobile web used to use some different standards and go different routes because they weren't really full browsers, but at least not in the modern browser sense. But with mobile Safari, they went with, okay, we're going to put a real browser in this thing. And part of being a real browser is handling click events, because people have been using click events for years. Steve Jobs or their engineers couldn't just, we're just going to break all the websites that use click events. Okay? So what they did in browsers is they essentially emulate click events, because I don't have a mouse attached to my phone. The way it works is so whenever you put your finger down like that on the phone, okay? There's touch events, and those fire immediately. And 300 milliseconds later, a click event fires. So what they did is if you put your finger down and you move, they're assuming you're not clicking. You're trying to scroll, because that's how you scroll on your phone. But if you quickly tap up and down and nothing else happens in the next 300 milliseconds, they go, you were clicking. So therefore, we will fire a click event even though you don't have a mouse. Have you ever noticed on your phones, sometimes you have clicky things and you click on it and it just takes a little bit of time for that to ever fire? Sometimes it's because your phone's slow. Sometimes it's because of that 300 millisecond wait. It is noticeable when you're used to immediate response times. Okay? There are ways to avoid the 300 millisecond display, but the delay, especially by using other types of events on your phones. But you can use click events on your phones. Just realize there's going to be an ever so slight delay as the browser waits to decide if you're really actually trying to click on something, and then fires the click event for you. So it is emulated and works. All right, what are some other events you can use? Mouse down, mouse up, mouse move. Very useful for desktop, not very useful for phones and tablets. Which probably means if you're making a web application and it can be used on something other than someone's desktop, don't ever use these. Or if you do, you have to have a backup strategy or you have some other way of triggering this functionality. Okay? This is your equivalent to your hover. You could use this, I guess, for hover. Okay? Once, I remember, there was a website that came out. It was by web developers, for web developers. It was totally funny because to read any of the content on the site, you had to hover over something to reveal a link and click on the link to go to the content. I like browsing the web on my iPad, so I heard about this site. I'm going to go check this out. And so I went there on my iPad, and I'm like, I can't do anything. What's going on? I try to click on things, and nothing happens. Then I went there in my desktop browser, and I hovered over something, and it opened up. I'm like, oh, they're using hover. I can't use this on my iPad. They fixed it in like a day. They probably got a lot of people saying, hey, you can't use it on my phone, can't use it on an iPad. So things like hover don't depend on those things in the mobile world. If you use them, you can use them. You're just always going to have some other way of performing the action and all that. All right, so for touch events, this particular way of doing touch events was created by the Safari team for mobile Safari. And it's basically made up of touch start, touch move, touch end, and sometimes touch cancel. So you have your phone, and this also works on Android phones as well. You have your phone, put your finger down, that's a touch start. You move your finger, that's a touch move. Pick your finger up, that's a touch end, right? You put one finger down, that's a touch start. Move it, touch move, you put another finger down, that's another touch start. It is quite happy with multiple fingers, okay?
What's cancel?
Like if the operating system needs to cancel your touches, like I would assume like if a phone call comes in, sometimes there's a UI that pops up over, okay, well, it's gonna cancel your stuff. But these are primary, and basically every time I program something with touch, I just turned touch cancel, just always called the same code that touch end did. That always made sense for me anyway. So touch event also contains, any event firing contains an array of all the touches. So when you put 4 fingers down on your phone and a touch start happens, or touch move, all 4 touches will be in an array, and we'll see some examples of that here in a minute. This is the core event for touch programming for all WebKit-based browsers and Firefox. Okay, so that means iOS and Android and mobile Firefox. Okay. How about pointer events? Well, this is the core event programming model for Internet Explorer. Now, in the mobile world, Internet Explorer isn't doing very well right now. I don't know if you noticed. But surfaces are doing okay. And if you want to program the touch event, so for surfaces, this can be a good choice for you. And so what Microsoft did with this is actually really interesting. It's very irksome because if you want to touch stuff on a mobile device, you have to do now 2 different event models. That's annoying. But what they did was really interesting in that they decided to get rid of the whole mouse, pen, touch distinction. It said they're all pointers, which is actually really nice because then you don't have to have separate events for click and touch and pen. So ultimately, if the entire world were to go with this model, it would drastically simplify some of this event-based stuff. It's a great idea. Apparently that's not going to happen, but it was a good in theory. And it does have lots of options, so you have lots of things there. So that's pointer events. What you don't generally get is you don't get gestures. And so if you think about swiping or pinching or zooming or whatever, those don't get generally built in. There are some built-in ones for pointer events, but they don't work on any other platform, so you don't really use them. There are some built-in for iOS that don't work on Android or any other stuff, so you don't really use those either. So generally what you're going to do for that is either manually code those things or do something like using an event library, because there's event libraries out there that will it's like jQuery. Use the library, and they will emulate swipes and things like that for you to use. So the last one I used was Hammer.js. I'm really disappointed in the UI because it used to be a picture of MC Hammer, but they changed it. It's really, really disappointing. So anyway, you can swipe and stuff if you're on a touch device. Or you could code some of the stuff and emulate it yourself. It's up to you, depending on how you roll. Okay, so let's look at some examples. How are we doing? Subject stuff. Okay. So this is canvas click. Whenever I click on here, I'm getting my XY coordinates for where my mouse is, and I am putting a dot on the canvas. Who's done canvas before? That's a shame. Canvas is the best HTML element. Of all the HTML elements, it's by far the best. We should have a canvas presentation. Let's see, canvas click. All right, so what is canvas? Well, it's like all DOM elements, it's a square, right? The nice thing about canvas, though, it's like a painting canvas. It's you get a big box and you can draw stuff in it. It's just like you're painting. It's awesome, completely awesome. Love it. So what am I doing here? Well, I'm getting the canvas, and then I'm getting the context. The context is like a brush. Canvas is the thing you paint on. The context is your brush. You do things with the context to draw things on the canvas. So like, for example, if I want to draw a circle, I specify a fill color, I create a path, and I'm going to draw that circle at a certain XY location that works out a Cartesian coordinate plane of x of 0, y of 0, y positive, x positive. That was opposite. X of 0, y of 0, y positive, x positive. Anyway, you draw an arc at x, y location, that's the center, given a radius and a start radian and an end radian. 0 being on a circle the far right. All the way around is math.pi times 2. So in this case, this is going to draw a full circle, and then I fill it, and that gives me a little bit circle. Lots of things you can do here. You can do sprite animations. That's great. Some of the time. And surprisingly, getting your XY location within an element across browsers is really annoying, but that actually does it remarkably well. But we won't go into that because this is what we're here for, click events. So I'm clicking on the canvas, I'm getting my position within the canvas, and then I'm going to draw the circle at my X and Y location, and that's the draw code. Okay? And that's this. And that's cool. This one works with pointer events and touch events and a mouse. Okay? Of course, we
Any
use the mouse
issues
here.
with the edge of the canvas?
What's that?
Any issue with the edge of the canvas? If you're at 0 and something, and you click and it's trying to put a radius, does it pop up on the other side? Or?
So if right here, I did it right here at the top left-hand corner. It's kind of hard to see. Basically, when you draw outside the canvas, it just gets clicked. So, okay, so this one works across touch events models. So let's look at Canvas Touch. So it's very similar to the other. Here's the difference. Instead of clicking, just clicking, I have touch start. So whenever touch start happens, I'm going to go, remember how I said there was an array of touches whenever you, on iPhone, an array of touches. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to loop through all the touches, and I'm going to get the X and Y coordinate of each touch one at a time and draw it. So this is actually multi-touch. You can draw multi-touch. Okay, so that handles touch events. What about pointer events? Well, MS pointer down, get the position of the pointer and draw it. Does pointer events allow multi-touch? The answer is yes. Well, then where's the array of touches? Well, it works completely differently. If you have a MS pointer down attached and you put 4 fingers down, it will fire the event 4 times, 1 for each finger. So it's a different model than the array of touches that you have in the WebKit-based model. So this is also still multi-touch enabled. It's fine. Should work fine. Each individual touch, you'll get the position of the draw. And then finally, click, get the position of the click and draw. Okay? So if you want to handle multiple event systems, you're going to end up doing this kind of thing, where you ultimately have at least a little bit of duplication. So you can say, okay, in this event, do this, but in pointer events, do this, and clicking, do this. It's not too terribly bad. It's doable. Okay? Some examples you can mess with. That was Canvas Touch. This is a signature pad. This is also Canvas-based. So I can draw Eric. So my handwriting is better than this, but I cannot draw very well with a touchpad. And so, how does it work? Well, it's very similar to the last one, except it involves, let's just take touches for example. Touch down, touch move, or touch start, touch move, touch end. Whenever I touch down, I start a line, which means I record that XY location. And then as I move, I'm getting all sorts of events through here. All sorts of events with X and Y coordinates. Let's change that to signature. Go. Where is this crazy code? There's draw segment. I don't want drawing. I don't want add touch. I want touch start. Here we go. Okay. All right, so let's see. Well, that was underwhelming. Oh, I didn't touch. This isn't. I'm using a mouse. So, where's my mousey code? Mouse down. Here we go. I want to do it on the move. So here we go. All right. Oh, that's better. Okay. So each time I move, I'm getting my XY coordinates. And so basically what I'm doing is I'm creating an array of XY coordinates. And just adding and adding and adding them as I mouse move. And then when I mouse up, I end the line and continue moving. Okay. Down, move, up, done. And it's basically in Canvas drawing a bunch of little bitty lines between each of the XY coordinates. That's how that works. And so this is more code, but given what it does, it's actually not too bad. We won't go into it, but it's all checked in. You can go take a look at your leisure. Let's see, sliding graph. Here's, I think, our last canvas, maybe. This is same basic idea. As I drag left, I'm shifting the whole drawing context right and left. Left shifts it left, right shifts it right, and so forth. So that could be useful. Same kind of concepts.
So earlier you were talking about when you draw, if you're drawing outside of the canvas, that it's going to get clipped. So how do you, that obviously is pre-drawn, and you're kind of moving it within the scope of the, how are you?
Actually, it's not pre-drawn. I don't think it is. Let me see. So there's my data points that are actually drawn graph. So whenever I draw, whenever it draws, it first clears the entire rectangle of the canvas. So it gets it blank, and then actually draws the entire graph again.
So as you move each pixel, it's redrawing the whole canvas.
Yes. Canvas, and this is one of the nice things about Canvas. Canvas is ridiculously fast. It is very, very fast.
That's a HTML5 stuff.
It is. We should talk about it in an HTML5 user group. Totally should do that. So basically, I have an X offset where I start my drawing, and so as I move left and right, I just
so
start.
if you're interested, you can go back actually to the previous meetups. I think they're online. I think Eric has already done like a bunch of them.
You can watch the videos if they're out
yeah,
there.
there video section.
Okay, this one is a little bit more useful if we do it in IE. So actually, let me fire up parallels. Let's do Windows 10. Whoa, that's warning-y. Okay, I think they want me to give them money. Yep, they want me to give them money. I'm not going to give them money. Not yet, anyway. Parallels is actually great. It's worth buying. I don't want to wait for an upgrade, though. I don't use it that much. No. So anyway, while that's thinking about loading, what this is for is I have on this page a whole lot of events. Okay. I have a lot of the basic UI events: mouse downs, moves, ups, clicks, touch starts, pointer downs, all that kind of stuff, all attached. So whenever you click on something, we can see what events fire in what browser. That's the goal. I think this one's Edge. Okay, hello, Bing. You know what I need is I need that link I gave you. You know, I thought about doing this earlier, and I wish I would have now. Anyway, let's go to the live sample. We'll do it live. All right, developer tools. It's F12 in Windows World. Console log. Here we go. Let's see what happens. I actually have not tested this on Edge yet. I'm sure it'll be fascinating. Here we go. So here we go. So I does a mouse down, a mouse up, and a click here. Okay, that's cool. Let's open up Internet Explorer, the desktop app. That's the most popular musicians on tour this fall. Toucher. Console. Aha! All right, this is more interesting. Because of all that pointer stuff, whenever I do a click on IE, I get a pointer down. Oh, excuse me, I get a pointer down, a mouse down, a pointer up, a mouse up, and a click. All of those events will fire on IE. Okay. As we saw on, I don't know, did we see? Let's on Edge. What happens here is we get a mouse down, mouse up, and a click. It doesn't do the pointer there, though. I thought we saw some pointers. Yep. Sometimes you get the pointer events showing up, like MS pointer leave. Okay. If we go back to our Chrome, it's just mouse down, mouse up, click. If you do this in a mobile device, you will get touch starts, touch downs, various things worth playing around with. You can sometimes hook up your iPhone, if you're using an iPhone, to your Mac and through Safari debug things. I say sometimes because I tried it earlier today and it didn't work, maybe because I updated my phone or updated Safari and didn't update to the new version of macOS. Computers. How do they work? Okay, so that's what Toucher's for. I'll let you play around with that if you want to. Now this is for Glenn. It's just a very simple example. In general, I totally avoid hovering now almost entirely because of the mobile world, but here we go. It is exactly what we described earlier. Could you have a menu that works both in a hover world and in a touch clicky world? Okay, this is hover. Can I make it work on mobile? And that is if you use touch events or click events. I just did a click. Now I'm not hovering over it, it stays open. And it's what you said earlier, I am keeping this open two separate ways. One based on hovering, which is just through CSS, and the other is when I click, I add a class and use that to keep everything open. And so if we want to look at that, go and touch menu. Here it is. I have a unordered list, then this is the submenu inside a list item inside my primary menu. The unordered list is by default hidden because of the class, hidden. And if I hover over a list item that is a direct child of the primary unordered list, I will then apply to the unordered list inside of it display block, which hides it. Or if I apply the open class, I will then say any direct children of the list item that's open, and that's basically how it works. It's not beautiful. I'm not a designer, so that's my excuse. It's not beautiful, and you can, one click toggles it on, and so the hover stuff is just always on. I click it again, and it's off. So if you need to do that, you can. He was the only one who gave me a request, so I did it. All right, so that's what I want to talk about tonight. So what did we cover? We covered lots of stuff. We looked at a simple event. We did capturing and bubbling. That was weird. Then we did event delegation, incredibly useful. Very useful technique. We know how to stop capturing or bubbling. Now, we also know how to prevent default, which is a common use case for some people. We looked at various UI events. Oh, I forgot to look at the scroll event. We'll look at that next. And we looked at a bunch of examples. Now let me go. No, that's okay. Scrolling. Here's chapter 1 of Franz Kafka's Metamorphosis. I totally stole this from Project Gutenberg. Well, the text, anyway. So here we go. Scroll event. Well, if you attach addEventListener to the scroll event on the window, you can actually know anytime the scroll happens. So you see this effect sometimes on web pages. Look at the bottom right-hand corner. Boom. A picture of Franz. Right there.
I thought he was a roach.
That's only later in the story. Yeah. Does that happen in chapter 1? I haven't read it in a few years. But I think in real life he didn't turn into a roach. Pretty sure. All right, so how does it work? Well, let's look at scrolling. So the you are reading, that little box at the bottom is just position fixed at the bottom right-hand corner. And here is all of that text. Here's the JavaScript. So on the event of scroll, fire that function. And I can look at scroll Y in the browser to see how much Y I have scrolled. If I've scrolled more than 300, then I will remove the hidden class on Franz's head and show Franz in the bottom right-hand corner. But if I then go back up, I will add it back. So that's that logic. Other places that do this, take OvenBits, a local company. So see this fancy header. I bet $5 that they actually do this using scroll events, though I actually haven't looked at their code. But you could totally do this. I actually don't know how you would do it otherwise. So here we go. See that header? It's cool. When we get to the white, I mean, what's going to happen when you have white text on a white background?
It's going to blend in.
Bad things, right? You won't be able to read anything. So, save the day, JavaScript. So when you get there, they changed some CSS classes. I did check that. And that they changed the UI. So now here, and it is a little translucent. That's kind of cool. Anyway, all the way down, it's fine, but when you go back up to the top, it'll go back. Okay? You can do this. Watch scroll Y, see where you're at, and when you get to a certain point, boom, change a class and change your UI. Yeah.
Is the Y coordinate a actual pixel, or like is one pixel, or?
It is given in pixels.
Okay.
It's probably in CSS pixels, not in actual hardware pixels.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, that's. I think they probably use the scroll event, but you would totally use the scroll event for that. This is one of my. Is this it? 55 places. No.
So the main differences on events between Microsoft and other browsers is primarily just the pointer and touch and mouse events, or are there other events that are different?
There are plenty of subtle differences. Plenty of subtle differences. It is sometimes slightly frustrating. All right, so here we go. Boom, look at that. Okay, here's another place where I would use the scroll event. So this is a real estate website. I turned 40 last year, so I'm looking forward to my retirement and my retirement community. So I'm looking into these things. Anyway, so there's a nice looking real estate agent in Austin. So I'm scrolling down, and there's lots of content here, but eventually I'm going to have white space. So boom, there he is. All right, I'll totally do that with scroll events. So that's just fixed positioning something here and just hiding it, showing it in a certain position. Okay.
CNN must use the same thing, and many of their stories will be a video at the top that's really large, and then as you scroll up to read the story, it shrinks into a small corner on the right and gives you more room to read. And if you scroll back up to the top, it,
That would make sense. Yeah.
yeah, things like that.
Okay, now I'm actually done talking about things. Okay. So, any final questions? Hope that was helpful. Hope that's what you're expecting.
That's good.
Good. Okay, well, let me know if you have any other questions. If you know anybody who's looking to change careers and wants to become a developer, send them to me. Would love to talk to them. So, thanks.
Thank you.